Hello everybody and welcome back to SupaRetro. My name is Chris. So, over the last 2 years, my life has went through a lot of changes, multiple moves, and my collection has updated quite a bit. So in this video, I'm going to show you my updated video game collection. Well, here we are in my humble Boston apartment living room. The walls are kind of messed up from the last tenant and stuff, but I feel like I've got a decent setup here. But let's not waste any more time on that. Let's jump right into the games. So in the living room, I have this shelf that a family friend actually gifted to me, and I display most of my modern games or games that I might actually play in the living room more here. Starting above the shelf, I have a small collection of amiibo figures. Now, I'm not like an avid amiibo collector, but some of these I just had to get, especially the Breath of the Wild series ones. And then hiding behind some of these are the NES and SNES Classic Edition consoles, which are still pretty well sought after. Moving on, you can see that I have some collectibles at the top of this shelf. Undertale Collector's Edition, the Final Fantasy VII Deluxe Edition, and then some Wii U box sets. My PS4 collection is probably my biggest game collection just because it's the modern console that I play the most, and I get a lot of these games for cheap. On this shelf, you can see some of my limited run games, RPGs, and etc. Moving down, I've got my PS2 collection, and this is another one where I have a bunch of games just because I spent a lot of time playing this console. You can probably tell I'm a huge fan of JRPGs, so that's like the majority of this collection. Two of the highlights of these games are Silent Hill Origins and one of my favorites, Cinemasssacre Episode 3. In the bottom right corner of the shelf, I have a small Wii U collection as well as Wii games. Now these aren't all of my collection, but these are the games that I'll probably play the most of the ones that I own. Some of my favorite pickups for the Wii have got to be Ju-On the Grudge, which is a pretty rare horror game based on the film. And I actually spent a decent amount of money on Xenoblade Chronicles before the definitive edition came out on the Switch. And then I have to highlight what I consider a hidden gem called Lost in Shadow. This is a really unique game that I highly recommend. Moving right along, I have my small but mighty Nintendo Switch collection. There's not too many games here, but the ones that I do have are pretty awesome. I'm currently playing Grandia 1 on the recent HD collection, and then I also have to show you this cool box art for Heaven's Machine. Below the Switch games are my GameCube games. These games have shot up in value even since before the pandemic, but since the pandemic hit, they have skyrocketed. One of my highlights here has to be the Zelda Collector's Edition promotional disc, and I also have my childhood copy of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. In the lower left-hand corner of the shelf, I have my PS3 collection. Now again, this isn't all the games that I own, but it's a majority of the games that I'd be most likely to play. This system's actually pretty cheap to collect for right now, so if you want to pick up some of these games, I would go for it soon. Some of my highlights here have to be 3D Dot Game Heroes by Atlas, and I love this Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection, which I believe contains 10 games on it. You know, I know Konami's not my favorite company, but I do love Metal Gear Solid. And while I'm over here, I have to show you these cool coasters that I picked up from GameStop a while back that depict PS1 box art. I do have a Tomb Raider one somewhere, but I don't know where it went. If you watched my last collection video, you know that I keep a lot of my video game controllers and cords stored in sealed bags just to protect them from dust and scuffing and etc. And I keep those in my ottoman in the living room just because it's easy access from the couch. And now we move on to the TV setup, which isn't as extreme as my other setup, but in this cube organizer I can keep 4 consoles plugged in at the same time and move them around relatively easily. In the bins below, I keep a lot of my consoles stored. And I like to put, old shirts and things over them to protect them from dust as well. Here you can see the Atari 2600 Darth Vader edition, and then in this bin I've got the Nintendo 64. And there are, I believe, like 17 to 20 consoles in these bins. On this cube organizer, you can see some of the collectibles and things that my partner keeps. And then I also have my PS4 controller chargers, and then this small organizer which keeps memory cards. I'd like to highlight this Mad Catz 32X PS1 memory card, which is actually 32 memory cards in one. I know, revolutionary for the time. And then I keep other things like these Game Boy games. Look at that Elmo one with a Sharpie on it. There's my Game Boy Advance SP with some of those games in the back. And then below, I typically keep my PSP, but you can see it is out. I'm not sure if it's still in storage or not. And then here's a small game case for PSP games. In this cube organizer, I keep some of my holy grail items, such as the Lunar 2 box set, Lunar 1 for the PS1. And then behind those, I have my small Sega Saturn and Sega CD collection, as well as some PS1 long boxes. But the highlights for this collection have to be Shining Force 3, Albert Odyssey, and the original Lunar 1 and 2 on the Sega CD. In some of these cubes is where we keep our small DVD collection. We watch all sorts of movies, but I think some of our favorites have to be the horror genre as well as Disney. And speaking of Disney, check out this VHS box art and see if you spot anything out of the ordinary. Below this top left corner shelf is where I store majority of my PS1 collection. Now, this collection is probably my most expensive, and as you can tell, there are a ton of RPGs just because, again, that's like my favorite genre. You've got Xenogears, Wild Arms 2. I could just list names on and on and on because that was probably my favorite era for RPGs, and these games have also skyrocketed in value since the pandemic. Some of my highlights here have to be Castlevania Chronicles, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and I do own a copy of Mega Man Legends 2. Now, I know, there is no manual. I don't know what happened to it. This is my copy from childhood. So, if you have a manual out there and you want to send it to me, I would be eternally grateful. In these bottom organizers are some of my partner's games. As you can see, this little mermaid, Tiger Electronics. There's a Mariah Carey CD in there. Not too many games, but some of the Wii U collection and etc. And then in the bottom right-hand corner is where I keep my new Nintendo 3DS XL, which I just got this year, and I'm super stoked to have it. I've not really gotten into handhelds that much before, but the 3DS has some excellent games on it. I do have to mention before we move on to the next room that a lot of my collection is in some of our storage closets just because I don't have the space to display all of these boxes and things, but they are safe and I still have them. And now, for the moment we've been waiting for, let's move on to the next room, which is just down the hall. So yes, here's my bedroom, and as you can tell, this is where I keep one of my retro shelves as well as my music equipment and where I edit videos. This is like my fortress for YouTube. Over here I have my Yamaha Motif XS8 keyboard, my Akai MPD, as well as my Scarlett Solo interface. The bedroom TV setup isn't as advanced as the living room, of course, but there is another PS4 here, as well as my Nintendo Switch. And then over here is where it all happens. This is my humble gaming YouTube editing setup with my MacBook Pro, my gaming PC, the Elgato Facecam, my Shure MV7 mic. I've got a Nintendo Switch set up over here. And then below, I have my Retron 5. And then you can see a little bit more of the gaming PC. And as we move on, you can look at the top of this shelf and see lots of different collectibles, console boxes, etc. On the top shelf over here, I have my SNES collection, which is probably my favorite retro console. And then some of the highlights here include my copy of Earthbound, which my friend Nick gifted to me, and I'm eternally grateful, as well as Chrono Trigger, which I picked up for $30 a while back. And then here's a copy of Shin Megami Tensei If. Below this shelf is my Sega shelf, and I don't have a huge Master System collection, but I have some games in the box, and some loose over here, and then tons of Genesis games. My highlights have to include Strider, Outrun, and then the 3 Shining games on the Genesis. I don't think there are any more, but Shining Force 2 is one of my favorites. Moving on, I've got my N64 shelf. This is another childhood collection that I've added to over time, and I don't have too many boxed games. I've found them here and there, and unfortunately, a lot of the games that I had when I was a kid, I threw the boxes away. I'm super grateful to have both of the N64 Zeldas in box, and then I have to show off some of these overlooked games for the N64. You got Duck Dodgers, Rocket the Robot on Wheels, and Mystical Ninja starring Goemon. Moving right along, I've got my NES collection. Now, I actually got a decent deal on a lot of those boxed games. I think I bought like 5 of them for $80 or something. But I have a ton of loose cartridges, and this is one of my favorite consoles to collect for because most of them are relatively cheap and they're easy to pop in and play. Some of my highlights here have to be my Castlevania collection, which I do have 1 in the box, 2, and then my favorite, Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. And last but not least, I have a mix of games on the bottom shelf. I bought an Xbox 360 with a ton of games for the pandemic, and I also have original Xbox titles and my small Xbox One collection. So there you have it. That is the vast majority of my video game collection. I really hope you enjoyed this video because I enjoyed making it. I love to show people my passion for this stuff. And if you did like the video, make sure you like and subscribe down below. That would really help me. And let me know in the comments what other content you'd like to see me make. Hope to see you in the next one. Take care.